So the last thing I want to say is this. We have to beat Trump. We have to take him down on the economy because he's incompetent. He really is. I mean, think about it. This is a guy who went bankrupt running casinos. It's almost impossible. Step back and think, if you own a casino, it's a question, how much do I want to make today? It's like, not if you're Donald Trump. It's like, whoa, we're upset, we're bankrupt again. How'd that happen? He is incompetent at his job. And the other thing I want to say is this. As Democrats, I know the press wants you to believe that we either are going to end up with a socialist who thinks the government should take over big parts of the economy, Bernie Sanders, or a Republican mayor from New York, Mike Bloomberg, who's done a bunch of things that don't square with democratic values. And I think, it's been on the stage, but stop and frisk, they use those words, but that's racial profiling, and racially profiling a kid and putting him up against a wall with no provocation whatsoever. And that's not legal, as far as I can tell. But it was a huge, huge deal for years. And honestly, for me, the fact that he gave $250,000 to the re-election campaign for Lindsey Graham last time, it's like, really? How do you do that? I just think it's hard to be a Republican and then switch to being a Democrat and not have a whole bunch of things that go like, whoa, what is that about? But I'm saying this, we need to pull this party together. I'm a grassroots person, I haven't mentioned, but started one of the biggest grassroots organizations in the United States called NextGen. NextGen did the biggest youth voter mobilization in history in 2018. And I could take you through it, but the basic point is this, we're all about turnout. Half of America doesn't think the system works, thinks what I've said is true, that corporations have bought the government, that both parties lie, and they don't vote. They're all Democrats. And so when we think about what's going on, we need somebody who can pull the Democratic Party together and get the people who don't vote, who are all Democrats, young people, black people, Latinos, think the system is full of baloney. We need someone who can pull the Democratic Party together. And my argument is it should be a progressive Democrat. It should be, that's what I am. I am a progressive Democrat. I want to appeal to the big tent that is the Democratic Party and the big tent that is America. And that means appealing to black people and Latinos, Asian Americans, Native Americans, as well as white people. And it means pulling together the philosophical difference between moderates and progressives in the Democratic Party. And so I am asking you to support me on this because I know that if we do go to one of these extremes, we add to the risk that Donald Trump gets reelected. And that is an unbearable risk for us to assume. If that happens, this is going to be the generational election like 1980 when Ronald Reagan came in and brought in all these bad ideas, or 1932 when Franklin Roosevelt came in and brought in all these good ideas. It's going to be that. And the reason you're going to notice there's going to be gigantic turnout because everybody's going to figure out this really matters. But it's actually bigger than that. Because of climate, this could be the most important election held anywhere ever on the face of the earth. Because if we blow the climate, I'm not sure, it can go to a place we can't control anymore. There's a clock. It isn't like we blow it for 4 years and nothing changes, so now we have to deal with the same problem. 4 years more, it's a completely different problem, and it may not be a problem we can control anymore. So this election, in my opinion, everything is on the table, and as a grassroots person, everybody has to show up, and the Democratic Party has to absolutely be together, and we have to go out and beat the Bushes and get everyone in this country to realize how important this is, and that you don't have a choice but to be registered and go to the polls in November of 2020. Okay, you guys, there's somebody with a microphone who will come. If you have a question, please say your name and lay it on me.
Thank you for coming. Jerry Hanna, City of Orangeburg. If you mentioned several initiatives, and if all of your initiatives pass, but we're speaking about health care today. With the health care initiative, persons are getting shot and putting a strain on the hospitals and medical areas. So if that's the case, that's health care. What would your initiative be about gun violence?
So, Jerry, let me say this. Gun violence to me is a perfect example of corporations owning this government. And I'll give you my analysis, which is this. Over 90% of Americans for a long time have wanted mandatory background checks on every gun purchase. Over 90%. Something like 70% of NRA members want background checks on gun purchases. And we've never gotten it out of the Senate of the United States because the NRA is actually controlled by gun manufacturers. And they're worried that if there's any change, any modification to the Second Amendment, that they won't be able to sell as many guns, and they don't want it to happen. So from my standpoint, I can tell you all the things I stand for. I want background checks on guns. I want to license gun owners. We license car owners. I want to license gun owners. I want to register ARs. I want to stop the sale of assault weapons and high-capacity magazines. I want to enforce red flag laws. I want to have voluntary buybacks of assault weapons. I want to reduce the number of guns in our society. And I want to make sure that they're kept out of the hands of people who clearly shouldn't have them. And I want to do it, for all kinds of reasons. The mass killings, the spousal murders, the streets you can't walk down because you're too scared, and the suicides. 60% of gun-related deaths are suicides. We know that in the states with lower gun concentrations, there's lower gun deaths. And we know that in the states where they restrict who gets to own a gun, there's lower killings. We have to do those things. But the question is, how do we get there? It's not hard to figure out what to do. It isn't. I just outlined it. The question is, how do we get it done? Because, I started by saying, we have a broken government. It's been bought by corporations. It's been bought by gun manufacturers. We have to make a change in who is in the Senate. There's no two ways around it. And the way that we can do that is by not stopping to pretend that we're Republicans, but a little bit nicer. The 50% of the people who don't vote can't stand it. They think both parties lie. We have to be organized and do the work. And at Next Gen, we've been doing that. We go door to door. We register kids on campuses. We're on every HBCU we can be on in the districts we're in. We do texting. We're shameless. We do puppies at the polls because kids like puppies. We're totally shameless. But we have to tell the truth and drive the turnout. And I can tell you at Next Gen, just as an example, in 2018, Next Gen went into 38 Republican congressional districts. Our whole goal was flip the Congress. That if we don't flip the Congress, the Republicans control everything and we have just a horrible next 2 years. 38 congressional districts, more than doubled the turnout of young people. Young people are the largest generation, most diverse generation, most progressive generation, voting at half the rates of other Americans. Doubled the turnout of young people. 33 of the 38 districts flipped. That is what we have to do. That is what we've been doing. People always say to me, why don't you concentrate on grassroots? I'm like, why don't I concentrate on grassroots? I started one of the biggest grassroots organizations in the United States. I don't know anyone else who's done that. We do this, and we have to do it. When we look state by state, if we get the turnout we need, we will win in places you can't imagine. That we got the governorship of Kentucky in last year. I think Trump won Kentucky by more than 20. We held the governorship of Louisiana. I think Trump won Louisiana by 30. Everything turned blue in Virginia for the first time. There's something going on here. Higher turnout by young people, higher turnout by African Americans. That's the answer to every single one of those results that I just quoted you. So when I look at the United States of America, I don't sit here and go how can we convince people who love Trump to love me? It ain't gonna happen. They think Trump was sent by God. Really? That's a pretty deep feeling to convert. But there's 50% of America that agrees with everything that you think. Affordable health care, quality public education with universal preschool, a living wage, clean air and clean water. They agree with every single thing. Change the tax code. They don't vote. All we have to convince those people to do is that their vote matters a lot. And when they show up, we're going to win in places they don't think we can compete. But we got to show up first. And we got to be out there registering. And we got to tell the truth. We're completely different from Republicans. You don't need to be Republican light. They can vote for a real Republican. How about if we're Democrats and tell the truth and start to be a little tougher and fight back a little harder? Because frankly, for the last 40 years, we've been sort of getting our butts whipped around this country, and it's time for it to stop, and this is the year. Tony? Connie.
Connie Johnson.
Got it. Connie.
My mother died of AIDS in 1995. I was diagnosed in 2002. South Carolina currently ranks 11th in the country for HIV/AIDS prevalence, as well as 66% of those people living with HIV/AIDS in South Carolina are African American. How do you propose currently HIV/AIDS is addressed in with behaviors rather than the systemic issues? We can't talk about HIV without talking about the prison system, without talking about the education system, without talking about healthcare, without talking about poverty, without talking about all of these issues. How do we address HIV/AIDS in a way that addresses the systemic issues? And then a part two of another question that is totally off base. But what are your ideas about restructuring the Electoral College?
Okay. So, Connie, I'm from San Francisco. AIDS has been a huge part of the life of my city since the 1980s, and it continues to be. And so we talk about AIDS really straightforwardly and without any embarrassment whatsoever. And we see it as a health issue. I have friends who've been HIV positive since the 80s and are healthy. So I know that the cocktails can work for, virtually forever. So to me, this is a health issue about treating it that's critical. And I was talking this morning and hearing about the fact that there are very high incidence of HIV/AIDS here, which I had not known. I think that there are now new drugs that are preventative that have got to be available to everybody in the community. But they're called PrEPs, I think. That's got to be part of the health system. It's got to be, when I say healthcare is a right, that has to be part of the right, is to get those preventative AIDS drugs. And I think that you've got to talk explicitly and openly about how people get AIDS. And in San Francisco, we're over it. I mean, so many people died, and honestly, the LGBTQ community is so big in San Francisco that there's no reluctance to both talk about getting it, how you get it, and what you can do to prevent it, and what you have to do afterwards. And the attitude is like, we can't have people getting sick in the first place, and for people who are infected, we can't have them being sick and dying. We have to spend the money to make sure that they're safe. Really, I don't think there's a way around that. And I think on a federal level, we have to go there. And all those drugs have to be available, but we also have to be, if you can't tell, I'm a big believer in talking about awkward truth. Fine, we got to talk about it. You can never solve a problem you're too scared to describe, in my experience. And so I'm not going to be scared to talk about it. Because, you want to have an awkward truth, or do you want someone to be sick and die? I'll take the awkward truth. In terms of the Electoral College, look, as a Democrat, how can you like the Electoral College? I mean, for goodness sakes, it's anti-democratic with a small d. It's anti-democratic with a large D. Trump lost by something close to 3 million votes, and he's the president of the United States, not Hillary Clinton. It's hard to stomach. And that's not the first time that's happened this century, where we got a Republican president who lost the popular vote. If it's one person, one vote, we're very far away from that. There is a way to get rid of this other than a constitutional amendment. I don't know if you know this, but basically, if enough states say that the states can deliver their electoral votes however they want. If a majority of electoral voting states say we will deliver our electoral votes to whoever wins the popular vote in the United States on a state basis, you can change the electoral college without changing the Constitution. And at this point, I think it takes something like 270 electoral votes to win the presidency, and something like states with 200 electoral votes have said they'll do this. I mean, passed laws, not just, talking about it, have actually passed laws. And the question is, can we get to 270? There was a big move afoot where they thought there would be momentum, and that momentum, honestly, I think has died. But it does drive me crazy that a system that was set up originally to support slavery in the Constitution is now being used to, in effect, put into office people who get less than a majority of the votes in the United States of America. That is pretty hard. I mean, there are a lot of things right now about our political system that are pretty hard to swallow, but this is up there.
Good morning. My name is Margaret Hires.
We will get you next, sir. Okay? We'll do. Margaret, go ahead.
Yes. There's two people here that are friends of ours, and they stopped by our house on Sunday, and they had nothing but praises for you. So when we found out from them that you were going to be in Orangeburg this morning, I told my husband, get up. We're going to go on up here because there's something that needs to be called to his attention. I don't know if you are aware of this. My husband and I, we're senior citizens. 2009, we saw some commercials about reverse mortgages.
Yeah.
Well, we said, let's take advantage of it, because when we first moved down here, we brought a lot of land. And our thing was to help people that needed help. So we gave away quite a few acres of land. Didn't ask for no money or nothing. So when we got low in our funds and kept seeing these commercials, we called. So for about 2 months, we were back and forth communicating with the representative of this reverse mortgage company. Well, we decided that we was going to sign up. They sent a lawyer to our house 9 o'clock one night and told us that we had to sign the paperwork because they had to get the paperwork into the company before 12. Other than that, the process would have to be started all over again. So we signed.
So that's probably not true.
Well, we signed, and only to find out later on we were supposed to get our own lawyer. Well, we signed, and everything went along fine. Then back here about maybe 3 years ago, we get a letter in the mail with all this paperwork from a lawyer in Charleston stating it was paperwork for a corrected mortgage. And I said, well, what kind of stuff is this? It seems that they took the mortgage and put on 2 other little piece of properties that we have in another little town. Well, they kept calling us and calling us. And I told them, I said, look, it's wintertime. I have to worry about keeping warm in the wintertime. I said, first of all, we only put our house up and the land that our house is sitting on, which is about 2.5 acres. Well, they said they wanted all of our land, 95 acres. 95 acres. They kept calling and calling. So I told them, as soon as the weather break, I'm going to get a lawyer. So finally, I got a lawyer. The things got so serious, they called me and told me, find a lawyer and we'll pay the lawyer fees. So I found the lawyer. Then they tell him, the lawyer, they want my house and all 95 acres. They don't want the 2.5 acres. They want all 95 acres of the land. Now, mind you, the mortgage company, the reverse mortgage company that we started with, they sold out 2 years ago to reverse mortgage funding. Well, reverse mortgage funding sent us a letter demanding all the money, all the money. And so now they're threatening to foreclose on us.
Yeah.
And Any senior citizen that sees those commercials, you better be on your P's and Q's
Yeah.
because it's just a legal tactic to take away senior citizens' houses. And it's a shame.
You know, Margaret, what happened in the mortgage crisis in 2008 was exactly what happened to you. People signed legal documents they didn't understand. They got cheated. They got fooled. And for sure, somewhere on page 67 in footnote 10, there was something that said, "Oh, you agreed to this, didn't you?" But nobody ever read page 67, footnote 10. And the banks paid $300 billion worth of fines, and no one went to jail. And so what you're describing to me has gone on for a really long time, which is defrauding consumers by banks. And I hate to say it, but defrauding African American consumers by banks has been something that's going on specifically for a long, long time. You don't have a lawyer, you sign something, they explain it to you, they don't tell the truth, and then you sign something that says something that you never intended. You know, I have a friend who was in the civil rights movement, and he lives in North Carolina. And so he's working in the civil rights movement, and this elderly black man called him and said, "I keep trying to pay off my mortgage, but they won't let me do it." And he said, "I'm sure that's not true, but I'll call the bank and find out what's going on." So he calls the bank, and it turns out that what the man said is exactly right, that they literally are taking advantage of him and won't let him pay off his mortgage. And my friend he was a boxer. He has a terrible temper. And he told me that before the conversation was over, he said, "I am going to make it my life's work to take you down for what you're doing to this man. I am going to come and get you and your whole bank, and I'm going to put you out of business for cheating people." And he actually started something in North Carolina called the North Carolina Self-Help Credit Union. And he has gone after this kind of cheating for his whole life because he was so mad about what's going on. You do need a good lawyer. I'll give you his name. He will, I'm sure, have some good advice about exactly how to push back as hard as possible, Margaret. Of course they are. Something's wrong. Yeah, and they realized it. Yes, I'm sure there is. Let me talk to you after because I do have some people who are big time fighters on this.
I hope I can get up because I give all the honor to God. Because a house divided will not stand and cannot stand. I thank God, first of all, to be here today to see you. I'll try not to cry. I'm sure you looked at my eyes and you saw me, and I was looking at yours. I appreciate you.
Appreciate you, sir.
So God said to support you. I have an idea, but I won't share it. I'm going to tell you why. I used to be a scientist at Savannah Riverside. A lot of things you were talking about, the poison water. People try to buy me off. I wouldn't do it.
Hang in there.
I wouldn't do it. But I want to share something with you. Okay. I promised myself that I would not give my ideas to anyone again because I was scammed. You know, it cost a lot, 30 years of my life. I love the way that you're fighting for righteousness.
What's your name,
Because
sir?
that's what God wants, some elder siblings.
William?
I just thank God saw Mel. Mel knows my story. I saw Pastor right there. I haven't seen her in 15 years. I see my homeboy Craig. And then God brought me here. And one of the things you're saying, you know, we can't have this racial stuff. I wrote a book in 1995 about the racism in America. And God was speaking to me. We have to change. If we don't, I'm telling you, God's gonna let the enemy come in on us. I'm telling you. I spoke to the young lady from the state newspaper, and I told her about the young lady who was murdered a year ago at USC. I looked her in the eye, and I told her, there's evil people out there that will hurt you. And she was dead 2 weeks later, and I cried. Oh my God. I believe that you can do it, make a big difference. But I will not share my idea again unless with a person directly. I already hurt so bad, you just don't know. But people say cry, well, you're weak. I don't care if you think I'm weak. I'm stronger than you think. Because God revealed a lot of things to me. I told some of my students on Friday, and then by Sunday they were dead. How does that make me feel in my flesh?
Okay.
Oh my God. God help us.
Okay. Okay.
I'm sorry.
No.
Let me
You're
ask
not
my
gonna be sorry.
question. I'm educated as well. I said, what is your strategy to bring educational equity? It has a profound effect on the health services of all residents, especially the poor and the rural. And we all know, I know I throw the question out. I can't help it but answer it. We all know if people don't get an education, they're not going to have the money to take care of themselves. And then people take advantage of other people like it's nothing. Oh my God, they do it.
Yeah.
Oh my God, it's so good to see you. Oh my God, I haven't seen you in 15 years. And I did send the president a letter. I'm gonna sit down. I sent him a letter in June. I asked him, I told him the Lord said we need to go on a 30-day fast, prayer, and repentance. He refused. And the only person for
Trump
Congress.
going to fast?
Well, I'm sorry. I just had to
William,
do
you are an
yes, sir.
optimist.
I hear you. I understand. Thank you. But one last thing, I'm gonna sit down. The only person I did hear back from was Senator Tim Scott. He and I prayed, and actually, I'm just gonna say it now. I spoke with him in 2016. I looked him in his eye, and I told him the Spirit of the Lord says this next administration is gonna cause America much pain, and I cried. I'm done,
Okay,
sir.
brother.
Thank you, man. Bless
Okay,
you.
hang in
I
there.
like to talk.
Hang in there. I'll answer your question. So let me say this about education. I want to make a couple quick points. Look, Republicans seem to think that education is a cost for taxpayers and corporations. And you couldn't be more profoundly wrong about what education is. Education is an investment in the future. And it's an investment in prosperity and in mobility and in justice. And if we don't make that investment, then we're missing the best investment we'll ever make. And so when I think about how we spend our money, I want to give you two statistics. One is this: the number one indicator of whether you're going to have a successful life, however you measure that, is third grade reading comprehension. Third grade reading comprehension. And if that's true, then we can't spend enough time, effort, or money making sure that kids are doing well by third grade in reading. And that means preschool, and it means subsidized childcare, and it means Head Start for every kid. And if we don't do that, that means we're missing one of the most important things we can do. So when I think about education, it is about future prosperity. That's why I think Trump's so incompetent. A productive country is full of productive people who are well educated and get things done. That means they have to be educated and healthy, and those are good investments in terms of the prosperity of the country. But it's also about justice, and it's about race. If we aren't investing in kids from low-income districts, if we're not investing in black and brown kids, then we're legislating inequality for the next generation. And that's unbearable. So, I mean, I have lots of ideas about how to redirect the money the Title I money that directs money to low-income neighborhoods. But you cannot, in my mind, spend enough time, money, or resources on making sure that those kids by third grade are on the path that goes like that instead of the path that goes like that. And I want to say something else too. And part of this is about mental health. There's a huge mental health issue in this country, including for very young kids. And mental health is a great, it's a shortage of money, it's a shortage of attention, and particularly for kids. There are a lot of kids with PTSD that changes the way their brain forms and their outcomes in life. And the last thing I want to say is this, which is about race. The people in the United States who are graduating at the best level for everything, high school, college, or grad school, are black women. Black women. So if anyone ever suggests that this is about capability or intelligence or competitiveness, the reason I tell you that statistic is they're lying. This is about discrimination. You guys, let me say one last thing before Jerry throws me off the stage, which he's clearly waiting to do. I draw a cross on my hand every day because I want to make sure that I'm telling the truth and doing the right thing no matter what. You were talking about a house divided against itself cannot stand. That's it. I know that people think that came from Abe Lincoln. That comes from the Bible. He lifted it straight from the Bible.
Amen.
I don't want to have any compromise or conflict in what I'm doing. I am going to tell the truth and fight for you without any question. Not 99%, 100%. And I draw that cross on my hand to remind myself, you will not give up under any circumstances or for any cost. And that's what I'm promising you. I really am asking you to support me. But I'm telling you, I will fight without any question every single day, 100%, to get back to a just society and to get the kinds of things that this community, that you and your family deserve. And I will take on the people who are trying to stop it with joy. And we will together beat them. Thank you.
Tom, on behalf of not only the citizens here in District 95, but from 3 counties, because we have multiple counties represented here. And we want to acknowledge also our city officials, Mayor Pro Tem Kalu and others that are here representing city government. We want to thank you. And as you walk out the door, because I know you have to be someplace else and you're trying to get on the road and staff is pressing and pushing me, I also want to acknowledge the fact that you came out with a strong policy on HBCUs, and you are sitting in the center right now in terms of within 30 minutes of this location of 4 major HBCUs, some of the highest concentration in the country. So when you talk about health care and how you can connect the dots there, I wish as you leave, please tell these folk a little bit about your HBCU policy, which is a major piece of your platform as you make that run for president.
Just so you guys know, what Jerry's referring to is, what I'm proposing is $125 billion to the HBCUs over 10 years. That is 40 times what they get right now from the federal government. They are short of cash. The kids are paying high tuition and coming out with high debt. These are institutions that had to exist. Mr. Brunson was telling me that the family health centers started because black people weren't allowed in the hospitals. Well, the HBCUs were started because black kids weren't allowed in the mainline colleges and universities. And they've done a great job. They've done a great job for the kids. They're important institutions in the towns and cities where they're located. And I'm talking about 40 times as much, $125 billion over 10 years, to rejuvenate that system and take it to a brand new place to do the job it's been doing of producing most of the black generals and judges, doctors, teachers, and engineers. That's what we're talking about doing. We can have, look you guys, it's hard to believe in this Republican world, but we can have a growing, vibrant country again where people are doing better than their parents did, and they're making more money and putting it in their pockets and learning more, and it's an exciting world to be in. We just have to win a few elections and kick their ass. So why don't we just do it?
Tom,
Jerry.
I got one thing to say. Start up. Thank you so much, Tom. Let's give him a warm round of applause.
Thank you, Jerry Governor.
Thank you for what you do.